In this crazy world, it's so hard to unwind. So I'm taking time just for me. Gonna find my peace, let my soul be free. In the quiet moments, that's where I'll find a little room to breathe, leave it all behind. Give me room to breathe, I need some time to heal my heart, to clear my mind. Gonna love myself, yeah, I believe in the power of me. Just give me room to breathe.
Great new day to all my self-care friends and family. Welcome back to another Room to Breathe podcast. I'm your host, Life Coach 614, and I am so thankful and grateful that you've made space to be here with us today. Now, before we jump into today's episode, I need for you all to do me a quick favor. If you're feeling the vibe, go ahead and show us some love. Tap the screen, like, comment. Most importantly, I need for everyone to share this out with someone who could use a little healing energy today. And if this is your first time here or you haven't done so already, I need for you to go ahead and give me a follow. Subscribe to our channel so that way you're always tapped in when a new episode drops. I also want to personally invite you to check out our digital home at theselfcareclub.org, where you will find everything you need from affirmative apparel to motivational merch, as well as a ton of free resources to help nourish your growth and remind you that you are supported every step of the way. Just know that you are not in this alone. We are healing in community, growing one breath, one moment, one day at a time. So today, I encourage you to give yourself permission to pause, to make space for peace, for growth, but most importantly for you. And remember, if anything in today's episode hits home, be sure to drop those green hearts in the chat. That is our community's way of saying I am healing, I am growing, and I'm showing up for me. Now, let's get ready to breathe, reflect, and grow together. All right, family, listen, can I be honest about something? I think that a lot of people are secretly exhausted from performing a life that doesn't even fit them anymore. And no, I'm not talking about laziness. I'm talking about people who don't want better for themselves, right? I'm not talking about those people. I'm talking about the kind of exhaustion that comes from being, like that comes from constantly producing, constantly showing up, constantly carrying, constantly fixing, constantly surviving, all while quietly losing connection to yourself in the progress, right? Because somewhere along the way, I think that many of us have learned that our worth was attached to what we could accomplish. Elevated Awakenings, Kim and Monique, welcome in. Over the years, we learned that our worth was tied to how much we can produce, right? How much we could accomplish. And it tied into how useful we were, how available we were, how much, we could endure without breaking down publicly. And, let's talk about how dangerous that mindset becomes, right? Especially for the strong ones, especially for the people that everybody depends on, especially for the people who learned early that vulnerability wasn't safe, so productivity became protection. And you know what's wild? Some people don't even know who they are outside of their responsibilities anymore, right? They know how to survive. They know how to get things done. They know how to keep moving even when, they're emotionally falling apart. But ask them what brings them peace. Ask them what makes them feel alive. Ask them why they actually, or what they actually want outside of obligation. And you're met with silence. Because survival mode doesn't leave a lot of room for self-discovery. And honestly, I think a lot of us have built lives around pressure instead of purpose. We wake up already overwhelmed, already behind, already carrying emotional tabs that never got closed, right? Already exhausted before the day even starts. And we call it being productive. But nah, like sometimes it's anxiety with a planner. Sometimes it's trauma dressed up as ambition. And I know that, I might make some people uncomfortable, but this conversation isn't meant to just sound good. It's supposed to make us reflect. Because what happens when your entire identity is built around being needed? What happens when your value is tied to how much you can produce? What happens when everybody gets the productive version of you, but you never get the peaceful version of yourself? See, this conversation came to me because I started realizing how many people are praised for burnout while privately feeling disconnected from their own lives. People are checking boxes and still feeling empty, building businesses and still feeling emotionally neglected, handling responsibilities while silently fantasizing about disappearing for a week just to hear themselves think again. And the truth is, being productive and being purposeful are not the same thing. One can keep you busy forever. The other requires alignment. One can drain you while you're trying to prove something, and the other one stretches you towards who you're becoming. So today we're going to get honest in this conversation. I don't plan for this to be polished or performative, right? I'm not giving you 10 tips to maximize your morning routine. No, we're not doing that. Today we're going to talk about the emotional cost of constantly producing, the addiction to being needed, right? The guilt that people feel when they rest, the grief of realizing that you abandon parts of yourself just to survive, and what it means to finally ask, does the life that I'm building actually feel like mine? Because I think that some people don't need another productivity hack. I think that some people just need permission to breathe without feeling guilty about it. So settle in, fam, because this is the one. And it might hit a little close to home, but that's what we do, right? So I guess I just want to start it off by talking about how busy ain't always blessed. Can y'all put that in the chat? Busy ain't always blessed. And I think that this is a great place to start, this conversation, because I think that a lot of us have been confusing being overwhelmed with being important. Navalo, welcome in. Kim said, hit me, girl. Listen, busy ain't always blessed. So again, I think a lot of us confuse being overwhelmed with being important, right? We've normalized exhaustion so much that if we sit down for 5 minutes, guilt starts tapping us on the shoulder like, you supposed to be doing something. You wasting your time, you falling behind. And honestly, some of us don't even know how to rest anymore without feeling lazy, right? We stay booked. We stay available. We stay needed. We stay answering everybody. We stay fixing stuff. We stay producing, right? And if we're not busy, then we start to feel uncomfortable. That's how you know it is deeper than a time management issue, right? It is deeper than a time management issue, because some people are not, afraid of slowing down. They're afraid of what they'll feel once things get quiet. See, busy has become an emotional camouflage for a lot of people. I see you, brother. Welcome in. Right? As long as you're moving, you don't have to process. As long as you're helping everybody else, you don't have to sit with yourself. As long as there's another task for you to do, another goal, another crisis, another responsibility, you can avoid parts of yourself that are tired or grieving or angry, disappointed, lonely, or just simply unfulfilled. And the hard part is the world rewards this behavior, right? Like people praise you for handling it all. They celebrate how resilient you are, right? They admire how much you can carry. Meanwhile, your nervous system is screaming. Your body is exhausted. Your mind never shuts off. Your spirit is craving stillness that you keep postponing. But because you're functioning, nobody's checking on you. And let's talk about that pressure for a second. You know, especially in our community where a lot of us were raised to believe that rest had to be earned. You had to finish everything first. You had to take care of everybody first. You had to handle business first. You had to survive first. So now, even as adults, we struggle to enjoy peace without attaching guilt to it. We'll schedule, everybody else into our lives and then squeeze ourselves in to whatever little space is left over. And deep down, a lot of people are quietly asking, why do I feel so empty, if I'm doing everything? Because productivity can become a trauma response, right? Sometimes staying busy is really just avoiding ourselves, avoiding grief, avoiding disappointment, avoiding silence, avoiding the realization that we've built a life around survival instead of fulfillment. And see, that realization right there will humble you. Because eventually you start noticing you're getting things done, but you're not actually okay. You're accomplishing, but you're disconnected. You're showing up for everybody else while quietly disappearing from yourself. Thank you so much. And the hard part is the world will clap for your burnout. People love benefiting from the version of you that never sleeps, right? Welcome back, Tasha Lee, Elevated Awakenings. People love benefiting from the version of you that never sits down. And then, we get into this addiction of being needed, right? And can we be honest? Some people don't know who they are unless somebody needs them. And that's dangerous because now your value becomes attached to your usefulness. So you overgive, over-explain, overhelp, overextend, overfunction. And it's not because you're healed. It's because being needed makes you feel safe. And see, that's a conversation that people don't like having, right? Because from the outside, it looks admirable. It looks loving. It looks selfless. People call you dependable. They label you strong and reliable. You become the one that everybody can count on. But underneath all of that, a lot of people are terrified that if they stop being useful, that they'll stop being valued. And then people start to believe that they have no purpose. So they keep showing up past exhaustion. They keep saying yes when they mean no. Keep answering calls that they don't have the energy for. They keep rescuing people who refuse to rescue themselves. And eventually, you become emotionally responsible for everybody but yourself. That's why some people feel guilty resting, right? They feel guilty setting boundaries, guilty not answering immediately, guilty not choosing themselves, because they were conditioned over the years to believe that love must be earned through sacrifice. And let's go even deeper in this conversation. Some of us were praised for self-abandonment as children. Raise your hand if you've ever been told you're so mature as a child. Or they told you you're so responsible. They tell you, you always hold everything together. They say you never ask for much. She low maintenance, he low maintenance. They never ask for much. Or our favorite, you're the strong one, right? For those of us who got siblings, who was the strong one? The one that was so mature, right? Meanwhile, nobody noticed that you were drowning. Nobody noticed that you learned how to suppress your needs to keep the peace. Nobody noticed how you became hyper independent because depending on other people didn't feel emotionally safe. Nobody noticed that survival forced you to grow up before you ever got a chance to fully be soft. Yeah, Tasha. Tasha says my mother died when I was 9 and I immediately went into adult mode. Absolutely. Right? And think about this. So we've been conditioned over the years to be, mature and responsible, the one that holds it all together, to be the strong one, the glue for everybody, right? So now as adults, we think that purpose means carrying everybody else on our back. We confuse overfunctioning with love. We confuse burnout with loyalty. We confuse emotional exhaustion with being a good person. But nah, that's not purpose. That is exhaustion wearing a halo. And let me say this too. Some people are not only comfortable with, or some people are only comfortable with the version of you that overextends itself. So that moment that you stop overgiving, the moment that you stop fixing, the moment that you start saying, I actually don't have the capacity for this right now, suddenly people act like you've changed. But no, you didn't change. You just stopped abandoning yourself for approval. And honestly, that shift can feel lonely at first because when your identity is wrapped up in saving everybody else, choosing yourself almost feels selfish. But it's not selfish to stop pouring from an empty cup. It is not selfish to protect your peace. It is not selfish to ask, who am I if I'm not constantly needed by everybody else? See, that question right there, that is where your real healing begins. I wish that society understood that productive people still cry in the shower. Like, I just need people to understand this. Like, just because your life looks functional doesn't mean that your spirit feels fulfilled. And honestly, I think that social media has made this even worse because, people know how to perform doing well, right? They know how to post their accomplishments. We post our routines. We post our achievements. We post our busyness. We post grind culture, that hustle culture. We post this bossed up energy. Meanwhile, behind closed doors, we are emotionally exhausted, disconnected, overstimulated, running on fumes. And because we're functioning, nobody realizes how close we are to breaking down. It's like you can answer emails all day and still feel disconnected from yourself. You can build businesses and still not know how to bring yourself joy. Right? You can hit goals and still feel emotionally homeless. And see that part right there, it's like some people build lives that look successful, but don't actually feel safe enough to live in emotionally. Everything has become a performance. Everything becomes maintenance. Everything becomes another thing for us to sustain. And honestly, I feel like some people only feel worthy when they're producing something. If they're not accomplishing, they feel irrelevant. If they're not helping, they feel guilty. If you're not moving, then, all of a sudden you feel like your thoughts can catch up to you. So instead of resting, you stay busy. Instead of processing, they stay productive, right? Instead of healing, they keep achieving. And let's talk about how sneaky this becomes. Because high functioning pain doesn't always look dramatic. Sometimes it looks like still going to work while emotionally numb. What's up, coach? I see you. Still posting online while you're mentally drained. Still showing up for everybody else while secretly fantasizing about disappearing for just a little while, just so you can breathe. Some people haven't truly rested in years, not emotionally, not mentally, not spiritually. It's like their body stopped, but their mind never did. See, that level of exhaustion hits differently because eventually your soul starts resisting the life that your survival mode created. That's why rest feels uncomfortable for so many people, because rest forces you to meet yourself without, achievements attached. No deadlines, no applause, no distractions, no look what I accomplished, right? No validation tied to output. Just you, your thoughts, your unmet goals, your grief, your truth, your exhaustion, your desires, right? Your identity outside of productivity. And for some people, that kind of silence can feel terrifying. Because when the noise stops, they finally hear how overwhelmed they've been all along. But let me tell you something about healing, right? Something that I learned while healing. Your worth did not change with your productivity. You were valuable before you became useful to everybody else. Your worth was established at birth. Before you did one thing for anybody, you were valuable. And maybe that's the real work here, right? Learning how to exist without constantly feeling like you have to earn your right to rest, to breathe, or to even take up space. Because, again, productive people cry too. Productive people break too. Productive people get lonely too. Productive people burn out too. And pretending otherwise is exactly why so many people are suffering silently. Purpose feels different. Like, purpose has a different texture to it. Like, I don't know how else to explain it except that purpose feels heavier in responsibility, but lighter on the soul. Yeah. Purpose feels heavier in responsibility, but lighter on the soul. I don't know if that makes sense to y'all because, yeah, purpose still stretches you. Purpose still requires discipline. Purpose still asks you to show up consistently, even when you're scared and uncertain and tired. So that's like the heaviness, right? With the responsibility that comes with purpose. But there's a difference between being exhausted from alignment and being drained from constantly betraying yourself. Like, purpose doesn't leave you feeling hollow all the time. Now, don't get me wrong. Purpose doesn't always feel exciting, okay? Sometimes purpose looks quiet. Sometimes purpose looks like healing. Sometimes purpose looks like slowing down enough to hear yourself again. Sometimes it looks like disappointing people who benefited from your lack of boundaries. And if we really sit with that, I think we can finally admit that many of us were taught to chase what looks successful, not actually what felt aligned, right? We set these dreams, we set these goals, and then we have to chase success, never stopping to realize does this align with me, right? So we build careers that we hate, relationships that we outgrow, friendships rooted in survival, identities based on expectations instead of authenticity. And from the outside, everything looks fine. It looks cool, right? But internally, our spirit feels disconnected from the life that we're living. That's why some people keep reinventing themselves every few months, because they're trying to escape the dissatisfaction that they never properly addressed. Because purpose isn't just about what you do. It's also how your life feels while you're doing it. Because at the end of the day, peace matters. Joy matters. Alignment matters. Your nervous system matters. And I'm going to say something that might bother a few people, but I don't care. I'm going to say it anyway. Everything you are good at is not your assignment. Everything that you're good at is not your assignment. Like, I think I'm going to add that to the chat. Everything that you are good at is not your assignment. And I'm telling you, I wish somebody would have told me this sooner, because over the years, I've been good at a lot of things. And it took years for me to realize that all of those things were not my assignment. Just because you can carry it doesn't mean that you're supposed to. Over the years, many of us have become emotionally skilled at surviving chaos. So now everybody hands you chaos like it's your responsibility. You know, some of y'all are natural caretakers, so people assume that your life should revolve around saving them. Some of y'all are gifted leaders, so now you feel pressure to constantly perform strength, even though you're struggling too. But purpose is not punishment, and purpose is not an endless self-sacrifice. That mindset right there has burned out so many good people, because eventually you realize that you can spend your whole life being useful and still never feel fulfilled. See, purpose brings alignment. Productivity without purpose brings resentment. Do I need to repeat that? Did y'all pick that up? Purpose brings alignment. Productivity without purpose brings resentment. That's why some people secretly hate the life that they've built, because they built it around expectations instead of truth. They become who everybody else needed without ever, even asking themselves who they actually wanted to become. And honestly, one of the hardest parts of healing is admitting that the life that I fought so hard to maintain no longer fits me. Like, that realization comes with grief. Grief for the years that you've spent overperforming. Grief for the version of yourself that, thought exhaustion was normal. Grief for the dreams you delayed while surviving everybody else's expectations. But there's also freedom in that realization, right? It doesn't stop with the grief. Just on the other side of that grief is your freedom. Because once you stop living just to maintain appearances, you finally get the opportunity to build a life that actually feels like home to your spirit. And I can speak firsthand and tell you that level of alignment, that kind of alignment, you can't fake it. This is the uncomfortable part of the conversation, right? When you start to analyze who has benefited from your burnout. Because surely not you, right? Sometimes the people around you benefit from you never slowing down. And a lot of people don't want to admit that out loud, but we have to talk about it, right? Because these people around us have benefited from your lack of boundaries. They benefited from your people pleasing. They benefit from your inability to say no without guilt. They benefit from you constantly being the reliable one, the fixer, the peacemaker, the emotional support system, the one who always figures everything out. So as long as you keep overextending yourself, they stay comfortable. And if we're being real about it, some relationships are only functional because one person is overfunctioning. Like, even just saying that just pisses me off when I think about some of my past relationships, because when I look back at those relationships, they were only functional because I was over functioning. I was always over giving. I was always checking in on everybody. And the moment life got heavy for me, and I started noticing that those same people, clearly didn't learn the golden rule in kindergarten, right? I started realizing that I was the one carrying the whole relationship. And when you think about that, some friendships survive because you're the one constantly checking in. Some of your families are staying afloat because you're the one sacrificing your peace time after time again. We could take it to work and say that some workplaces keep exploiting people because high capacity folks keep proving that they can handle it. And eventually you become so used to carrying everything that people stop recognizing you as a human. Yeah. Like I can just remember a time where I felt less than a human, right? That people just kept handing me stuff and I kept rising to the occasion. And all of a sudden I felt like somebody's superwoman, like I can handle it all. And see, when you're in that, in that space, people start seeing you as resourceful instead of resting, right? They see you as strong instead of supported, capable instead of cared for. That's why the moment that you start choosing your peace, you start choosing rest, you start choosing intentionality, ultimately you just start choosing yourself, suddenly you're different, right? They didn't notice you crying on the kitchen floor. They don't notice you crying in your car outside the job before you step in. Nobody sees that. But the moment you start choosing yourself, suddenly everybody notices. And they want to tell you that you're changed. You're hard to reach. You're different now. Suddenly, people start acting weird because your boundaries interrupted the version of you that they had access to. Everybody will celebrate your growth until your growth requires different access. People love healed language until it shows up as an actual boundary. It's like, I see it all day. People will repost self-care quotes like all day, right? Until your self-care actually inconveniences them. It's like, it's cool when they do it, but if I do it, it's a problem, right? I would watch my friends reshare all of these quotes. And then the moment that I started living the life that they're quoting, they're like, oh, she acting brand new. And I'm like, I could have swore that's what you liked based upon your post. If I look at your Instagram feed, that soft life is the life that I'm living, but I'm the problem. Jordan said, they ain't hear me. Say it louder. Listen. Like, and that realization hurts because that's the moment where you start to discover, people were attached to your availability more than your well-being. It's like they like the version of you that always says yes. The version of you that never rests. The version of you that showed up no matter how exhausted you were. But the moment you start honoring your capacity, some people start experiencing your boundaries as a form of rejection. But it's not rejection, boo. Like, I just stopped volunteering my nervous system for public use. And can we normalize this? Everybody cannot have unlimited access to you and still expect the best version of you. Like, can we normalize that? Can y'all all write that down and post that everywhere? Everybody cannot have unlimited access to you and still expect the best version of you. Like, that is not sustainable. That is self-neglect with good manners. Right? And there's an emotional side to this too. Because for people who are naturally nurturing, loving, empathetic, and dependable, setting boundaries can really feel like it's emotionally violent at first. right? Because you second guess yourself. You wonder if you're being selfish. You feel guilty resting while everybody else still needs something, right? But healing will teach you that you are not required to destroy yourself to prove you care. Like, some people will run you into the ground if you let them, but you are not required to destroy yourself to prove that you care. Some of y'all have been surviving off of breadcrumbs of reciprocity for years. Always pouring, always supporting, always understanding, always making space for everybody else's humanity while your own needs get postponed indefinitely. And eventually, your body starts responding to the imbalance. Because we know the body keeps score, right? So now the irritability shows up, the emotional numbness, the resentment, the exhaustion, the desire to disappear. Just for a little while, right? That's not always laziness. Sometimes your spirit is begging you for relief, because burnout does not just come from doing too much. Sometimes burnout comes from being emotionally overconsumed for too long without replenishment, aka pouring from an empty cup. And I think that a lot of people are finally reaching the point where they're asking, what will my life feel like if I just stop centering everybody else's comfort over my own well-being? And like, honestly, that question changes everything if you think about it. What would my life feel like if I just stopped putting everybody else before me? Because once you realize that your peace matters too, you stop treating yourself like an afterthought in your own life. So I want us to begin to understand that there is a difference between pressure and purpose. And here's how you know the difference. Pressure says, hurry up before you fall behind. Purpose says, move intentionally. Pressure says, hurry, right? Go, hustle, hustle, hustle. Purpose says, do it with a purpose. Do it intentionally. Pressure creates panic. Purpose creates clarity. Pressure has you competing. Purpose has you aligning. And a lot of people have been living under pressure for so long that they mistake anxiety for ambition. Everything feels urgent. Everything feels time sensitive. Everything feels like if you stop moving for 1 second, your whole life is going to fall apart. So what do? We rush, right? We overcommit, overwork, overproduce. Not because, they're inspired. It's because we're scared. We're scared of failing, scared of disappointing people, scared of not being enough, scared of losing relevance, scared of being seen as lazy if we rest. And honestly, pressure has a really loud voice if you think about it, right? Pressure tells you that you should be further ahead now, that you don't have time to slow down, that everybody else around you is winning, so you got to keep moving. Pressure convinces you that you're running out of time. Meanwhile, purpose is usually quieter. Purpose doesn't scream. Purpose kind of pulls, right? It keeps nudging you back to yourself, back towards alignment, back towards things that actually matter beyond appearance and external validation. And yes, purpose still requires discipline, right? Purpose still requires consistency. It still requires work. But the difference between being tired from building something meaningful and being drained from constantly performing survival is that one expands you, the other one empties you. See, purpose can stretch your capacity without stealing your identity. Pressure steals your peace it takes your peace first. And let's talk about how pressure affects the body, right? People think that, pressure only lives in the mind, but no. Pressure also lives in your nervous system. That constant state of urgency that you feel, that inability to relax, right? That guilt when you're resting, that, feeling that you always need to be on. Your body feels that. That's why some people are exhausted even after sleeping, because rest and restoration are not the same thing. You can sleep for 8 hours and still wake up emotionally depleted if your nervous system never feels safe enough to fully exhale. And honestly, some people's entire identity is built around surviving pressure. It's like they don't know how to operate without stress, without urgency, without chaos, without proving something. So when life finally gets calm, they create pressure out of habit, right? Healing sometimes feels unfamiliar to people who have spent years in survival mode. And let me say something else. Purpose doesn't always move fast. Purpose, it doesn't always happen quickly. I think that's another reason why people struggle with their purpose. Purpose requires trust, patience, intentionality, and stillness sometimes, right? And in a world that is obsessed with speed and comparison and constant output, moving with intention can almost feel a bit rebellious, right? But not every season of your life is supposed to be hustle mode. Some seasons are for healing. Some seasons are for rebuilding. Some seasons are for grieving. Some seasons are for rediscovering yourself outside of survival. And if you keep treating every season like a race, you'll miss what the season is actually trying to teach you. That's why purpose matters. Because purpose asks you, does this align with who I'm becoming? Pressure only asks you, how fast can you prove yourself? But again, purpose asks, does this align with who I'm becoming? And honestly, if you think about it, one of those questions leads to peace. The other one leads to burnout disguised as success. So understand that you don't need permission to reevaluate your life. I think that a lot of adults are quietly grieving versions of themselves that they had to abandon just to survive, right? And I'm talking about like your creative side, your soft side, your rested side, the joyful side, right? The version of you that used to dream before life got heavy. Because survival has a way of shrinking people, not physically, but emotionally. You become practical, guarded, efficient, responsible. It's like you learn how to manage life, but you slowly forget how to actually experience it. And that realization hits hard when you finally slow down long enough to even notice it. Because a lot of people didn't intentionally abandon themselves. Life just happened, right? Bills happened. Trauma happened. Loss happened. Parenting happened. Disappointment happened. Burnout happened. Survival happened. And little by little, we start choosing functionality over fulfillment, right? You stop creating, stop resting, stop exploring, stop dreaming bigger, stop asking ourselves what we actually wanted, because Survival mode trains us to focus on what's necessary, not what nourishes us. And honestly, some people become so committed to surviving that they never stop to ask whether or not the life that they're building actually feels good to live in. And that's a painful truth, especially when from the outside looking in, everything looks fine, right? The bills are paid, the responsibilities are handled, people admire your strengths, your productivity, right? You're dependable, successful even. But internally, you feel disconnected from yourself. Like you've been performing adulthood instead of actually living it. I mean, think about these celebrities, right? The people that many of us look up to or grew up, aspiring to be like. Think about how these celebrities go through so much mess, right? You turn the TV on or you open up social media and it is somebody who's having a breakdown. And you're like, girl, bye. Like if I had that level of money, if I had Beyonce dollars, I'll be good. I'll be cool. That's because many of these people have built lives that look successful. Financially, on paper, they are successful. But these people are disconnected from this life. That is why they have these nervous breakdowns, these midlife crises. So again, you're allowed to reevaluate your life, right? You're so busy reevaluating what everybody else is doing. Reevaluate your own life, right? Understand that you are allowed to change your mind. You are allowed to outgrow environments, relationships, careers, habits, identities that once made sense for the version of you that was surviving. That doesn't make you inconsistent. It is not a sign of failure. It actually just makes you self-aware. Healing changes your standards. What you tolerated, it's like what you tolerated exhausted might irritate you healed. What once felt normal may start feeling heavy. What once felt necessary may start feeling misaligned. And honestly, I think that transition can feel lonely because not everybody grows at the same pace. So not everybody's going to understand your evolution. And sometimes, people become uncomfortable when that version of you that they benefited from starts changing. But you don't owe permanent loyalty to versions of yourself that were built in survival mode. We have to remember that everything happens in seasons. So that version of you did what he or she needed to do to get through that part, to get through that season. So you have to honor that version of you for that. But you're also allowed to become someone softer. You're allowed to become someone who's more intentional, more rested, more honest, more aligned. And yeah, you're going to feel guilty. Let's talk about the guilt that comes from that. Because some people feel selfish for wanting more peace. People feel selfish for wanting more balance, more joy, more room to breathe. Especially, if they've come from environments where struggle has been normalized, as most of us have, right? So we have adapted and started downplaying our needs, downplaying our exhaustion, downplaying, our desire for something deeper. But today, I just want you to know that wanting peace doesn't make you lazy. Wanting alignment doesn't make you unrealistic. Wanting a life that nourishes you does not make you selfish. Some of y'all don't need another productivity hack. Some of you just need room to breathe. You need space to hear yourself again. You need time away from the noise, away from the pressure, away from the expectations, away from constantly performing strength. Because sometimes clarity doesn't come from doing more. Sometimes Clarity comes from finally being still long enough to hear what your spirit has been trying to tell you all along. And maybe the real healing isn't becoming a completely different person. Maybe it's just returning to the parts of yourself that survival forced you to abandon. So we have to ask ourselves, what's really driving us? What's really driving you? Right? We circle back to the question that started this conversation. What's your agenda? What's your agenda? Purpose or productivity? Do you want to walk in your purpose, or do you just want to be productive? Because they're not the same thing. And I really need people to sit with this instead of rushing past it. What's your agenda? I think that a lot of people have built entire identities around being productive, being the dependable one, the strong one, the achiever, the helper, the hustler, the one who always gets it done. But underneath all of that movement, a lot of people are deeply disconnected from themselves. And the scary part is that you can stay busy long enough to avoid realizing it. Like, that's why this conversation matters. Because one path has you constantly proving, and the other one has you intentionally becoming. So what's your agenda? One keeps you busy enough to ignore yourself, and the other requires you to actually get to know yourself. So, what's your agenda? And see, this is the part that many people avoid, because knowing yourself requires honesty. Honesty about what's draining you. Honesty about what no longer fits. Honesty about who you've become in survival mode. Honesty about the fact that some of your accomplishments came at the expense of your peace. And that is hard to admit. I've been there, right? Especially when people applaud the very thing that is exhausting you. See, the world rewards productivity. The world claps for the hustle. The world celebrates people who are sacrificing themselves for success. But purpose often requires slowing down enough to ask those deeper questions. Questions like, do I even enjoy doing this anymore? Am I building a life that feels good for me to live in? Who am I outside of what I produce? What parts of myself have I neglected trying to survive? And see, questions like that will shake you, but eventually you realize that you can spend years building a life that looks successful on the outside, right? It looks successful externally, while internally feeling emotionally disconnected from it. And let me say this too. Some people are not tired because they're doing too much. Some people are tired because they're carrying too many things that no longer align with who they're becoming. Carrying relationships that drain them, responsibilities rooted in guilt, versions of themselves that they've outgrown, expectations that they never agreed to, pressure to be, inherited, right? The pressures that we've inherited from our ancestors, roles that we've accepted just to feel worthy. And see, that kind of exhaustion hits differently because it's not just physical, it's that soul level fatigue. And honestly, I think that many people are craving permission to stop performing survival all the time, to stop pretending that we're okay, to stop proving our worth through exhaustion, to stop tying our identity to the things that we carry or how much we can carry. Because life is bigger than constant maintenance. Each and every one of you deserve joy too. You deserve softness too. You deserve rest too. You deserve moments where your nervous system isn't constantly in flight or fight mode, trying to keep everything together. And maybe that's the real challenge here, right? Not building another schedule, not building a brand, not building a checklist, but building a life that actually feels like yours. A life where your peace matters, where your rest doesn't feel illegal. A life where your worth isn't attached to your output. A life where you can exist without constantly proving that you deserve space. So, before you start planning, before you open up your laptop again, before you volunteer yourself for more emotional labor, before you automatically say yes out of guilt, I encourage you to just pause for a second and ask yourself honestly, if nobody clapped for this version of me, would I still want this life? Would I still choose this peace, these habits, these relationships, these responsibilities, this version of success? If nobody clapped for this version of me, would I still want this life? See, that question right there, that question exposes the difference between pressure and purpose real quick. Because again, purpose may stretch you, but it should not require you to disappear from yourself to maintain it. And maybe healing just looks like finally admitting that I don't want to survive my life anymore, that I actually want to live my life. I want to experience it, right? Because that's the shift. No, not just doing more, not just becoming more impressive, but becoming more connected to ourself in the process. Because that changes everything. Now, this conversation right here, this wasn't about shaming our ambition. It's not about, me telling you not to work hard, to dream big, to, not to build businesses or chase goals or even create a life that you desire. I'm not telling you not to do those things. This conversation is about asking yourself whether the life that you're building is actually nourishing the person building it. Because somewhere along the way, many of us have learned to survive, but we never learned how to slow down long enough to ask ourselves, are we truly okay? Yes, Melody, it is about awakening your awareness. Because over the years, we have learned how to perform strength, how to stay useful, how to stay productive, how to keep moving no matter how overwhelmed, overstimulated, or emotionally exhausted we were. And the world has rewarded us for that. But burnout is not a badge, right? It's not a badge of honor. Constant exhaustion is not proof of purpose. And abandoning yourself should never be the price you pay to feel accomplished. I really want you guys to sit with that, because I think that some people have spent so much time trying to become successful that they forget to become connected to themselves. Some people became so focused on maintaining responsibility that they stopped maintaining their spirit. And honestly, I think a lot of people are craving a softer life, but feeling guilty to admit it. Not a lazy life, not an unmotivated life, but just a softer life. A life with room to breathe, room to rest, room to feel, room to exist without constantly proving your worth through struggle. You are allowed to evolve beyond survival mode. You are allowed to stop carrying things that no longer align with your peace. You are allowed to outgrow pressure. You are allowed to redefine success for yourself. Because success that costs you your mental health, your peace, your identity, your joy, your ability to rest, eventually stops feeling successful. So this week, I really want you to pay attention to your spirit. not just your schedule, not just your productivity, not just your to-do list, not just what everybody else expects from you. I want you to pay attention to what your body has been trying to tell you. Pay attention to what keeps draining you. Pay attention to what no longer feels aligned. Pay attention to the parts of yourself that have been neglected while you were busy surviving. And maybe, just maybe, the next level of your healing isn't about becoming more productive. Maybe it's just about you becoming more present, more intentional, more honest, more rested, more connected to yourself. Because you all deserve a life that feels aligned, not just looks impressive from the outside. And if this episode, hit home for you, drop the green heart somewhere in the comments. Share this episode with somebody else who's been carrying too much for too long, or send it to a friend who keeps calling burnout just being busy. And remember, if you're looking for a space where we can continue to have these real, raw, healing conversations together, come tap in with us over in the Room2Breathe community powered by school. You can access it by going over to our website at selfcareclub.org or simply by clicking the link in our bio. We have this community. We have this complete, digital home or our website that is all about our self-care. It's about reflection and healing and boundaries and growth and community. Just honest conversations just like this one. Because again, you don't have to heal alone. And you don't have to earn rest by destroying yourself first. So until next time, as always, I want to leave you guys with a little love and light. I want you to keep choosing peace even if it feels out of reach. And know that here at the Self-Care Club and in the Room2Breathe community, you will always be seen, always valued, and always supported. So don't be afraid to take up space, speak your truth, and make a little room for you to breathe. I love each and every one of you to life. And I am praying that your day is not just amazing, but aligned, intentional, and yes, on purpose, filled with purpose. Protect your peace, honor your capacity, and stop volunteering your nervous system for public use. Make sure that the life that you are building still has room for you to breathe. I look forward to connecting with you all soon. Thank you.